Hi, I'm Jane Garibay and representative for the 60th District, and welcome to On the Porch. I'm very excited today to have Representative Geraldo Reyes, who represents the 75th District, which is Waterbury. In the House of Representatives, he also serves as a deputy speaker, and we'll hear more about that. And he is also chair to the Black Puerto Rican Caucus. He has a long history of involvement in his town, and he's dedicated his career to helping the people of Waterbury. One of the things that really impresses me is his outreach work with the community's homeless population, which he has dedicated to. He has so many awards, it would take up the rest of the show to go over all of those. But I would like to say he lives with his wife, Hilda, because it takes, as representatives know, a family that supports us. So it's so important. And he also has two beautiful daughters, Cassandra and Christina, along with three grandchildren. So congratulations. Welcome, Geraldo.
Thank you, Representative Jane. It's a pleasure to be here, and good morning to everybody who's watching this great show.
Yeah. So let's cut right to the chase. I've been working with you for 3 years now. In my perspective, I see you as a person who brings sides together, because when you have 161 overall and 91 in our caucus, you're a person that brings people together within the Puerto Rican, Black Puerto Rican caucus. You bring people together. Tell us a little bit more about that.
My experience in organizing comes from my, believe it or not, I correlate everything in life with sports. So I spent decades playing basketball, baseball, football. My football career was cut short. I wasn't big enough, but I played baseball and softball well into my early 40s, if you will. And so I had a 28-year career playing baseball, and I correlate everything to managing teams. So I manage a lot of those teams. And when you're managing teams, you're managing a variety of personality, characters, people with different cultural, different backgrounds, comprehension levels. And then, so you really learn how to, it's a study of learning how to understand people and how to actually communicate so that everybody understands the message. And I've taken that same philosophy in life, and I've been very, very involved in the community in Waterbury for over 40 years, and but have taken a more active role, a more leadership position, if you will, when I started as the mayor's aide back in 2011 in the city of Waterbury. So I worked 4 years for the Mayor O'Leary in the city of Waterbury as his mayoral aide, predominantly focusing on the minority community and obviously the Hispanics, since I am fluent in both languages. But what I found out was that I expanded across the entire city, and I was able to communicate with all ethnic races, and there was no boundaries for me. And I believe that that's the foundation, that the mutual respect, that's the foundation in which all communication starts. And I've taken that same philosophy into the Capitol. That's a bigger team, a lot of Eagles under that Capitol, a lot of personalities. But at the end of the day, it is my responsibility to be able to get somebody in front of me, sit them down, sit him or her down, and have the conversations. And sometimes it may take more than one attempt, but eventually we get there. People see, people witness and see me in the Capitol all the time. And I make it a point to go over to the other side. After I'm done saying hello to everybody on my side, go to the other side and mosey on through there and, acknowledge anybody who's looking up at me, or, I think it's important that everybody feels that they're a part of. And that's the same philosophy that I take into my community. And I've been very fortunate and blessed to work with some great people down here in Waterbury, same thing in Hartford, and the state of Connecticut has had its challenges, but we have as a team, it's very important to always put the word team in there to move this state forward through our advocacy and our hands-on involvement.
Right. I agree with you that it's so important, and you never want to be in a room where the only opinion people have is the same one as you do. That it's good to hear, even within our own Democratic caucus, to hear different ideas and different perspectives, because we all come from different parts of the state.
Mhm.
So what work did you do with the homeless, Representative?
Yeah, and that's a great question. We've been dealing with Connecticut has, oh my God, excuse me, Waterbury has the largest shelter in the state of Connecticut.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that.
it's in my district. It's the St. Vincent de Paul shelter. It has 120 beds and can expand out to 170, 180 in an emergency, like today. And so, where there should be nobody out there sleeping in the snow, although you and I both know that there is. And there are folks that you just cannot bring in. But we in the city of Waterbury, I believe, have great outreach to the homeless community. There are 4 places on a daily basis where they can get a meal, a breakfast or a lunch. We have two shelters here, which I said one is the largest one in the state, which is the St. Vincent de Paul shelter.
No, I've heard
And
it.
the other one is the Salvation Army, which is for women and children and small families. Each of them have their limitations, but they do serve a great niche and are very popular we kind of be centrally located for purposes of of those needs. And I'm involved with I get involved and try every year to be involved with the homeless count that happens on a yearly basis. I know where the pockets of these tent cities are in Waterbury and Greater Waterbury. I'm involved with the food distribution and clothing distribution. We just finished a coat drive where we handed out coats. We've done it for like the last 4 years. I'm involved with different church organizations, communities that actually go out and feed the homeless on Sunday, because
Right.
a lot of the foods entities are not open on Sunday. They used to be. Some change, but if they're for the area that we serve does not have food services. So there's a church group that started, and interestingly, out of that, Jane, 4 other groups started. So we started one in the South End, and now there's one in the East End, one in the North End, and one in the West End. Different churches that have in their membership or congregation have gone out and done a wonderful job networking to communicate. And I love the fact that it's church-based, because sometimes people, when they're ready, want to hear a good positive word when it comes to something faith-based.
Right, and it's having the community involvement, not just town government or city government, but spreading out and all of us working together. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And I know the shelter you're talking about, because I've done the walk for hunger for food share, and they're always there in droves raising money for Waterbury. So that's pretty cool. So you are you're a deputy speaker. What does a deputy speaker do?
Well, that's a great question. So thank you. So our Speaker of the House is Representative Matt Ritter from Hartford, from District 1, and he gets to pick deputy speakers that he puts on his leadership team to be able to fill functions for him when he's not available. And the way the leadership works in that building, Representative Ritter is wearing many hats, because he goes from one meeting to the other, and he's usually on the dais. One thing with him, he's prompt. He starts if he says we're starting at 10, we start at 10. So he starts and ends all the hearings in the House of Representatives. But the majority of the body of that hearing, he leaves to his deputy speakers to be able to manage and run the House floor as the bills are brought out and the debates are had. So we have to make sure that as deputy speakers, when we're on the dais, we're actually making sure that the House, when the bill's brought out, that the House is run in an orderly fashion, and that it's done with the decorum and all the rules that we agree would happen before the session started. We agreed on a set of rules, and these are the rules that we have to adhere to, and that's all controlled from the dais. We're very fortunate to have folks up there that help us in case we make a hiccup. We're human.
Yep.
So there, we do have help up there just in case we also forget something, or even we forget a step.
To
And
make sure it's all done right.
it's got to be done absolutely right. And if it isn't done right, we have to do it over. So, and I've seen that happen as well. But and when we're not on the dais, the deputy speakers are helping the speaker organize meetings, deal with different caucuses. You alluded to earlier the various different groups that we have: Progressive Caucus, Environmental Caucus, Women's Caucus, the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, the Moderate Caucus.
Caucus, there's
Oh,
an environmental, right?
yeah. So it's all over the place. And what happens is the deputy speakers are kind of the vein, if you will, the conduit, so that the speaker has input back and forth from all these caucus. He can't possibly meet with all of them. And as it gets closer to the end of session, these meetings become rapid fire. And so this is a short session. It's I believe it's 5 months max. We start February 9th. And we've already started the pre-planning, if you will, and the deputy speakers are involved with the pre-planning as well. It's a leadership position. It lets you see things sometimes from 50,000 feet, 30,000 feet, or as low down to the ground as you want to get on these variety of issues. And there's no shortages of issues up in under that gold dome.
Right, because we have like 5,000 bills that are proposed each.
Only
session.
5,000. Only 5,000.
Yeah, only 5,000. And it gets cut down to maybe 200 to 300, right? And it has to go through the whole process, which is awesome. So tell us a little bit about the Black Puerto Rican Caucus. I mean, that was, you must have been so honored and thrilled to be elected as leader of the group.
Thank you, Jane. The Black and Puerto Rican Caucus is a caucus that was started over 40 years ago. I remember it started with 2 people. So and I think that the membership of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus right now is at 35 members. And actually, it just went down by 1. Our colleague Brandon McGee stepped down, so it's actually 34. But that 35 number last year in 2021 was the high water mark for the caucus. It's never had so many members from the communities of color. So, well, one thing that I will say is that we did get a young lady in from West Haven. It's Representative McGee. So 1 McGee left and 1 McGee came. In the same month, almost in the same month. But so it's a very diverse caucus. It's what I will say though, it seems to be 2/3 male, so we don't have as many females in there. And so every time that we get an opportunity or we hear that there are openings anywhere in the state, our caucus immediately starts thinking about, do we have a female? Do we have a female that we can get to run in that particular city, town? And regardless of whether the race can be won or not, I think the point is that, that you have to start being able to be bold and put your name out there and step out and actually say, I'm willing to do it, which is the first step. And the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus deals with so many issues when it comes to racial justice and imbalance when it comes to hiring practice, housing. Our issues run across the whole gambit of education, housing, environment, transportation, the public health, which is a big one because of the COVID-19 reforms. And we have the 9 pillars, and those things I just mentioned are all part of the 9 pillars. The big one this year is right after COVID reform, because if we don't take care of our health, the rest of the pillars won't matter because we won't be here. So we have to take care of our health first. So the COVID relief reform, how that looks like for this upcoming year 22 and beyond, and how it affects communities of color is our number 1 pillar. Followed quickly by housing. There's been, now that the moratorium has been lifted, the courts are open, and the housing evictions and movements in housing and shortages of housing is a big deal for us. And then the another big one, which is fastly on everybody's horizon, which is something that I think we're going to be talking about right out of the box, which is what juvenile justice reform looks like in 2022. So there was a big push in the tail end of 2021 to come in for a special session. And the governor, I don't even know if it's the governor, I'm going to say the Senate and the House wasn't able to come to an agreement on that special session, which I believe was a mistake. I believe we should have dealt with this in the special session, because there were things that we could have done to alleviate some of that tension. And I'll also say this publicly. Our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are using this as a tool against the Democrats, and I don't think that's entirely fair either, because there are Democrats like myself who believe that we do need to tweak the juvenile justice reform, that there is a problem. I am in the city of Waterbury, where a very small percentage of young men here are wreaking a whole lot of havoc, and so we need to deal with that. And I've been upfront about that, and so I just can't sit still and listen to the Republicans say that Democrats don't care and the Democrats are against policing and Democrats are defunding police. Never once did the BPRC ever say defund the police, but yet that mantra seems to have been stuck with us because of our color, and that's not right. But that said, we deal with social, economical, and education issues as it affects communities of color, and making sure that everything in our power is done that to level the playing field and to put the issues on the table and do our best to move a law or a bill forward to try to level the playing field.
Right. And it's a lot has come forth since COVID started, right? To me, it magnified some of the issues so that they couldn't be ignored any longer, type position. But I agree with you. I don't believe in defunding the police. I believe in supporting them more, getting them better training, all the things that need to be done, to have social workers on board, or people, if there's a rape case, that it's an officer trained. I always watch Law and Order and I think of Liv, and that's the type of person I think going out and talking to a woman, not, so I know just from my part, I appreciate all that you and the caucus does to bring those issues forward for us to look at and deal with. And so good job,
Thank you, Jane. You touched on education. The pandemic clearly pulled the covers off completely of how inadequate some of the communities were, where it almost took about 9 months to get everybody Chromebooks. And, the assumption that it was interesting because there were some schools that were closed on Friday and then went remote. And believe it or not, they were all remote on Monday morning. They had the computers, they had the internet access, they were able to power up computer, and they knew it. So it's interesting. We went from that great scenario, which I applaud them for that. I think I applaud them. That's tremendous. So we went from that range all the way to the other side where we didn't have computers and or internet, or even worse, know-how, because we're dealing with multi-generational families. So you're asking grandma, great grandma, your aunt to figure out how to get you on Google Meets so that you can actually go to school.
I still have trouble.
Of course, you look how long it took us to get going on Zoom, and it was the House of Representatives. We were laughing about that. And listen, I my hats off to educators, first responders. They went through it in 2021, and I'm hoping 22 is a little better for them. I think that the peak that we're in right now with the Omicron, I think that in my estimation, I'm looking at the models that said that this thing should plateau in a couple of weeks, and I'm hoping that the science is right and that we can get back to some degree of normalcy. But
I do too. I worry, even in my district, not all, but in general, more affluent families were working from home and those higher office type jobs. So they could be there with their children, or they could take the time off, or, they had different choices that they could make. But if you were working in the food industry, some in healthcare, the ones that take care of us when we're sick, healthcare, the nursing homes, etc., they didn't have that luxury from working from home, which made it so much harder. Like you said, if you had family nearby, you were lucky. That would help with your children, but it was tough.
It clearly showed a huge gap. The gap that we thought was here really was over here, and in some cases it was off the screen completely. And you know, from a housing, from a transportation, from an educational standpoint, from a technological standpoint, and in my estimation, it took what it took over a year and a half to get everybody somewhat comfortable with remote learning. And you know, I think that that at the end of the day, we understand that children need to be in classrooms, but I think at the same time, we also have to, at certain points, understand what's really the safest practice and when is the right time to pull them out. Because I think, you know, I'm a little concerned. I'll be honest with you. You know, the positivity rate is almost 23% in the state of Connecticut. I'm in New Haven County. It has the highest amount of hospitalizations. So, you know, which is different than some of the outskirts, some of the, you know, corners in south, northeastern, northwestern, or they're different. They're all, the counties are all different. And Jane, I did the math, and New Haven, Hartford, and Fairfield County account for 90% of the hospitalizations. 90%. And in those regions, in there are 5 districts with over 19,000 students in them, in those 3 districts. So I do have a lot of concern.
Yeah. Well, and what also this pandemic has done is brought out the heroes, the everyday heroes, like you touched on, teachers, to be a superintendent, having to make those choices, you know, the staffing, et cetera. And what I always want to tell people is everybody is trying to do their best, and they're doing a good job. You know, each town is making, you know, at this point, their decisions on where to wear masks, not. And no one wants to see sick people or this happening. Windsor is high also because we're we're in Hartford County.
Mm-hmm.
And so our numbers have been high, and you just hope that the more vaccinated, I think we also have a high vaccination rate. So those that are getting the Omicron are, you know, with less serious side effects. But what people don't realize, if you get it, even if you get a mild case, you can have long-term COVID effects on your health. And that's one thing they're finding. So it may seem like just a sniffle and you get through it and you test positive and you don't feel that bad. You can still have those long-term effects. So the best way is avoid it. And I don't like masks, but I will wear a mask everywhere, because to me, it's a simple thing to do to not only protect others, but to protect myself. And I know it's a huge political issue. For me, it's just staying safe and keeping the people I love safe. So.
Well, you know, you raise a good point. You know, I've traveled most of my life in my career in the engineering field, manufacturing engineering field. So I've been on many planes for decades, and it's interesting how our friends from the Far East have always had masks on when they came into planes, and I think that. Again, this is cultural, and when you ask Westerners to put on the mask, it was a big to do, and it turned political. But yet, our friends from the Far East, when they enter the plane, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, when they enter the plane, they always had a mask on. They've had a mask on since I've been traveling in the 70s and 80s on a plane. Always had a mask, and I'm saying to myself, you know, they look strange, and now I'm saying to myself, they were smarter than us all along, which It is what it is. Because
we did wear
they're trying to protect themselves.
At the previous, what was the first one? 1918, the pandemic.
Yeah.
Everyone wore masks. It wasn't a situation. Everyone got vaccinated. You know, so there wasn't as much political strife. Maybe in a different way, but not in this way. I haven't had a cold in 2 years.
Awesome.
You know, so.
Awesome.
But anyways, so yeah, it's making it, but I can't wait for session to start.
February 9th, Jane. Look, I'm looking forward to it as well.
Right. And we'll see what that looks like. So we still don't know what it's going to look like, whether it's going to be in person, everyone, or from our offices or what. And we'll probably go with the flow, right? Depending on what the numbers are, and base it on the science, whether we should be all in a room together or not.
Yeah, I think that there was again, leadership's discussion was they wanted to get everybody back into the building, and that decision may be thwarted by now by Omicron and the high percentage rates, and even just this week the Capitol had an outbreak of the so it's
Yes,
partially shut down because of the Capitol Police
right,
has an outbreak, so our state capitol is partially shut down.
right, right. I
So
know
we
our
don't know
town,
what it's going to look like.
pardon? I didn't hear that last comment, Jerry.
No, I said that, I'm sorry, hang on one second.
Leo's outside.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know I said that the Capitol itself is partially shut down, and that's going to affect the decisions going forward, I think.
Right, right. Well, I have total faith that you and our leadership will, keep us as safe as we all can be and that we can do it. What do you think are there any hot topics coming up that you can share that you know of? And maybe not even hot topics, but things that we will be looking at this session?
Well, as I said earlier, I think that one of the very first topics that we're going to be addressing is the juvenile justice reform, and that's the task force that's been together for months working on this. Have done a great job. There's our colleagues on the other side of the aisle had a list of about 25 items together collectively. That I think they've agreed to 7 or 8 of them, and it appears that 4 or 5 of them have can easily be implemented. And so I think that that's going to be, I believe that's going to be job one, because the people, our public has, the constituents are saying that that should be job one. So I think that's going to be one of the pieces of the.
And I know public safety has continued to meet with Representative Horn.
Mhm.
And, it's good for people to know, like you said, none of us want our cars hijacked or, crime happening, in our districts. And what I love is that they have been continuously working on a group with chiefs of police across the state. And they've been able to implement some things like one of the issues they had was not being able to see their background checks. And now they have 24/7 access for
Mhm.
background checks. So a lot of movement has been in there and tweaking and people working together. And that's what it takes.
To your point, Jane, some of what I call low hanging fruit, it's already been done. Changing the holding from 6 hours to 8 hours to be able to get a warrant, to be able to look into the records and the history, back history. That's all happened through the communication between the task force leadership and the chief of police that have been very actively in this conversation. And I have a great relationship with my chief of police here in Waterbury, which is Fernando Spagnola, who's been very vocal and very upset about the fact that nothing got done in special session, to be quite frankly. But to your point, some of those other things have been implemented, and hopefully in a very short order, we can get this in the rearview mirror and put in some good bills, some good laws that our first responders in the police force can actually, and the law and judicial can actually adhere and do the right thing by all citizens for these. It's a very small percentage of people that are doing this. It's less than 1%. And and that's why we have to be very careful with that you don't want to go overboard when it's 1%. Of the folks that are making a crime, but that 1% can cause millions of dollars of damage and have. So that's why it's so important to be that this, to me, needs to be dealt with quickly. The next one I think will be the education, because the conversation will continue on as COVID continues, as the first response educators, administrators are dealing with high absenteeism on the teachers, administrators, and students. One of the problems right now, shortage of drivers. I've had kids standing outside in Waterbury, the bus never showed up in the winter. It's not 75 degrees out. So so something as basic as if we don't have bus drivers, these kids, the schools are now 3 miles away. So however far away it is, and it goes around in circles till it gets there. And we didn't even get into the school and we already have a problem. So
right, right.
So
That
I
is,
think education will be another hot one.
that's awesome. We do. And I do think we have to appreciate, especially our teachers and paraprofessionals, those that are in the classroom, and really listen to them on what changes we can make. I appreciate our superintendents and administrators too, but those that are, on the ground running, to do. And bus drivers, you don't think about how essentials. I drove school bus for 8 years and I don't even like to drive. But I loved the kids and it was a good part-time job for me when my kids were little. So, but they do a humongous job too, and they deal with a lot of issues, and they care about the kids, they get to know them. So I'm glad we'll be looking at all those issues.
There's going to be probably some more discussion on what the housing eviction and what the housing courts, and I think that's also going to be a hot topic because of the fact that the labor shortage, the people not going back to these different jobs that are. We here in Waterbury we have a job fair on January 12th. I went to the last one maybe about 2 months ago. Jane, there was 90 companies there. They had to be 1,000 job openings, and they were hiring people on the spot. And that was
training. They're giving bonuses,
training. Really, I mean, I there hasn't been a job market like that in decades. I can't recall anything like that. And the pandemic has brought change. Career changes. People say, you know what, I don't want to do that job anymore. I want to do this job, or I'm not going to risk my life or my family's life. I'm not going to do this. And they're taking a lesser paying job to be safer, if you will. And some of our healthcare workers, some of our educators, they're looking at possible career changes.
Well, I also know of a lot of people that retired. We have that baby boomer segment. I know my husband decided to retire in September, when originally he had planned working more years. So I think, the biggest group, the baby boomers, with them retiring, they were working to 70, 75, all these different jobs have opened up, right? Mm-hmm. And what I know my constituents to know is that there are many phenomenal job education out there through the state, through the Commission on Women, Children, mm-hmm. etc. Mm-hmm. I went to the one with the graduation. They had 20 students from across the state. It happened to be all young men, but it's open to women. And they were trained by energy efficient Leticia Colon Mejias. And she organized with all the companies. So they had 3 months of training. They became certified. Plus they were, if they wanted, they were, I don't know if it was part of the program, but they were trained on how to do a budget, how to save a little, what to do. And they all had jobs, living wages, leaving that program. So there are programs out there for people that want to, do something better than, working the lowest paying job.
Well, Jane, to that point, rightfully so that we increased the minimum wage over the last couple of years, and and I like to call it a livable wage. It's
and it's barely that even.
And I was just I'm trying to frame it. It's just sometimes it's not enough, but these folks, these entry level jobs that I went to at the job fair, nobody was paying minimum wage. They were all well north of $16,000, $17,000 an hour. They're beyond the minimum wage that we have set. We don't get to 15 to 24, so $15 an hour to 24. So, but the job shortage in the job market is right now, the way I look at it, they're so dire. They themselves increase. They're paying $16, $17, in some cases $20 an hour to get you there. And so it's in my mind, it's a workers market right now. You can go out and reinvent yourself, or take a look at something that you had an ambition for and then never thought about it, or there are many educators who are if they're close to retirement, they're probably going to go because they're scared. They don't know, and
Right.
especially if you have young family. I think that I have a lot of friends that are educators, and some of them are retirement age. Others are possibly looking at career changes, but there's still a few that want to troop through. They're going to get through this, and so it's all over the place, just like a lot of other things during this pandemic. But our job is to keep legislating good bills to help grow the state of Connecticut in every which direction we can.
And I love when the private sector steps up to the plate and raises salaries by themselves. I know Google gave a $1,000 COVID test machine to every employee worldwide, and they can get up to 20 tests a month
Wow.
through their company. So, sometimes I get angry with the larger companies, but there's some that do step up to the plate, and do, and that's what we need more of, is just people doing the right thing. So, but we're getting to the end of our program. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
Well, listen, I know we're 2 years into the pandemic, and I like to end on a positive note, that's saying that what we've learned over the last 2 years has only put us in a better position for 2022. And I'm praying and looking forward to an exciting 2022, not only in Hartford, in the capital, for our legislative team, but for all our constituents in the state of Connecticut. And I still think that, I want people to know that I still believe that Connecticut is one of the best states in the union, and has a much stronger upside than a lot of these negative folks keep saying. I think that that Connecticut is right up there in the top 10 states to live in my estimation. So
yeah, and I'd say in the top 3.
Oh, there you go. Well, Representative Jane, thank you for the opportunity, and we're happy to come back anytime you want me.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, Representative Reyes. We really appreciate, and I learned a few new things too, and I look forward to seeing you. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today for On the Porch, and we'll see you for the next episode.